No. Why can't I open it? Cool. Come on. Hey. Where did I go? Again.
Hello everyone and welcome to another horrific review. What the real horror story is here is trying to get the connections working and everybody on at once. We're actually inventing a story in the background that how there's something cursed. Either we don't know whether this movie we're about to talk about or if it's somebody by bringing the internet to New Zealand has pissed off a demon that's decided to curse everybody who tries to stream using it. Welcome Dale and Andy. Finally we got this happening. There's been a bit of stop and starts and rearranging and just the universe being the universe and conspiring against us.
Totally.
How are you? So what we've got here is obviously you have to use. Remember last time I tried Zoom, and Zoom's an absolute pain in the arse. So we're trying it in Skype. That's why you see the big CM me logo, because I have to be on that as well as on here. But we're making it happen. Every problem has a solution.
It does.
Definitely. It does.
Okay.
So Dale, you've got the earphones on because you're actually listening to this live. Can you hear Andy?
Hi, Dale.
Not yet. I'm just trying to get into it, but just trying to open up our site on the YouTube. My phone's decided to throw a wobbly.
Oh, lovely.
No.
Yeah. The world is conspiring against us, Colin.
Oh man, this is
all right. It's getting here.
It's the joys of technology. Honestly, there's definitely weird stuff going on in the works.
Machines can be silly.
Oh, blimey.
Hello, chat. Hello, everyone in chat. Apologies for the delay, but like I said, these when you have issues, you want to get everybody on board, find a way around it, because obviously these guys are great to talk to. It's great to have them on, and it's nice to have a couple of people. As you know, our authors have been part of this show from the very beginning, and it's always great to have you guys on to not just talk about work and books and things we're creating, but it's nice to hear your thoughts on movies and just get together, riff a bit, and just talk about horror, because that's why we're all here. We all love the genre.
Oh God, yeah. I'm always glad to be here, Colin.
And you too, Andy and Dale. Obviously, great to have you on. We should do it more often. Once we exercise the demon that's plaguing Dale's life.
Hello, Andy.
Hi, Dale. How are you?
There might be a wee right. Oh, yep. We've got communication.
We do.
Hi. Good. Thanks. It's a bit delayed.
Cool.
Here, better late than never. That's the thing.
Yay!
We get there. That's what
all right. Awesome.
But yeah, we're here to talk about Let the Right One In.
Yep.
This is not your typical horror movie. It's definitely a really dark element to it. It's not for the casual viewer. I would dare say, would you agree with that?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's for someone new to horror movies that this particular story could be off-putting.
I agree.
Yep, I would, and not so much a slasher sense. So I've always said the Terrifier series with Art the Clown is not for newbies.
Yeah.
The same as this story is definitely not for newbies. If you've never watched a horror movie before, want to dive in, don't go with this one. This is the deep end of the pool.
No.
There's foreshadowing there.
Yeah, well, it really is, and there's a lot of dark material and subjects which might
totally
might put people off. In fact, when I watched the original again, the 2008 movie, there was a scene which I want to talk about later, which made me go, holy shit, I hope it was a stunt double for that, because I'm like, I did not need to be seeing that, and we'll go into that in a bit. But let's first of all talk about the bloody frustrations with distribution and movie studios and the stupidity.
Those I do not know much about that whole scenario there.
So trying to watch, there's 4 versions of this story. Okay, there's the original book.
Oh wow!
Which I have downloaded but haven't got a chance to read because I've been bloody busy. So apologies for that. It's even darker themes from what I've heard in reviews that the 2008 movie only sort of glances at.
I couldn't even find them.
You've then got the 2010, was it 2010 remake? That
I think so.
Is sometimes available, sometimes not in different regions.
Yeah.
You've got the TV show, which I'm glad we're not talking about because it's a pile of shit. Where in the UK, I can only get one season. Apparently, there's 2 seasons of it. Dale can't get it at all.
Oh no!
Were you able to get everything, Andy? Have you access?
I've never read the book. Oh, the other notes?
No, what I mean is, do you have a problem seeing different versions of different stories? Like when a movie's distributed, are there times you have difficulty?
Most of the time, no. But sometimes with distributors, they can there's certain licensings they can take with producers and directors. I've noticed, not all the time, but it can happen, and sometimes it throws off the story. Sometimes it can add to it. But I think overall, I mean, most of the time it's not a problem. I don't think. I mean, I don't know a whole lot about the whole distribution. I know a little bit about it, but yeah.
Cameron and I have major troubles. We try to do, obviously, we have our end of the month, the Horrorific Talk Spot, where we reference stuff going on, horror news, and then we try to review a movie. And when it comes to releases, like last example was Barbarian. I could not see that for love nor money. The cinemas had it at stupid times. What was the other one? Pray for the Devil. Couldn't get to see that either. Because the way it's going. Dale, I think you have the same problem. Where even and I can understand physically, with physical copies of something that, it needs to be shipped somewhere, you need to pick it up. But in the world of streaming, there's no excuse for properties. And also, as you know, this channel is anti-piracy. I don't believe in it. I believe it destroys jobs, it destroys lives, it funds crime. No way do I advocate for piracy. But when the studios themselves that release the properties make it difficult, you can understand what the temptation is.
Yeah.
And I just think it's absolute madness the way they're working. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
They might have too many rules and laws. I could see that.
I do too.
Because companies wanting to protect themselves and whatnot.
Bring back DVD shops.
It was not to sound like an old fart harking back to the old days, but the 90s were the 80s were like a renaissance, but the 90s were like the golden era, I say, in terms of mental attitudes of things, being able to see stuff and people coming together. And part of that was actually physical stores. I've talked about this like ad nauseum. But a new movie comes out, you go down to, in the UK, for example, one of the big chains was HMV or the Virgin Megastore. You would have a release come out on a Saturday or a new album come out, and people went and queued. And for that moment in time, you might have come from all different walks of life, backgrounds, political thoughts.
Right.
Your bone coverings were different shades. It didn't matter, because for that moment you were together for the love of a movie or an album or a new book. And I don't know, people got along better because you understood, okay, don't agree with anything, but this moment we've got that one thing in common, and that's all it takes, I think, to understand somebody, and not necessarily form a friendship, which but it's also possible. But have an understanding of somebody. Okay, well, we don't agree on this, and this, but we like that. Cool, And I think where streaming and the internet's in one case has brought people together, it's also pushed them far apart. And with movies as well, I don't think people understand how big an impact movies have and storytelling. It's back down to the basics of storytelling. As a human species, we have lived through storytelling. That's what makes us, build houses instead of just living in caves. That's what made us sparkle sticks together and create fire and aspire to be more than we are. And we seem to have less of that now, yet it's more available. It's very strange.
I love that you said the 80s was a renaissance and how easier things were. It was how easy it was to get things there, and how much it was more about like the passion of it, for the sake of it, for the love of horror and the love of movies and the love of storytelling. And it's interesting that you said a renaissance, because I feel very strongly that that's coming back again big time, and that we're in the midst of it right now.
I think we're at the tail end of this nonsense, this bitterness and hatred. If you want to use terms like woke and all, it's the same. It's just the herd trying to stomp on everybody and look for victims. It's human nature. It's been done before. It's a game. I mean, you think of coming out of the 70s, the 60s and 70s, despite what people say, were very repressed eras. And then I think that the 80s, now to look back and especially doing this and reviewing so many movies and looking at the, peeling back the curtain, definitely the 80s was an absolute fountain of creativity. And
oh, God, yeah, it was.
The 90s was sort of not so much in creativity, but just accessibility and coming together, But then once we got into the 2000s, and especially around about 2010, it's all just fallen off a cliff. And it's affecting so much. Like, people don't have the imagination anymore to fix problems, for example, like distribution. Bringing it back to this. Because people don't have imagination, they can't bloody even release a movie because they're so bureaucratic and so tunnel visioned that they don't see the bigger picture. And it directly affects us being able to, coming together to talk about a series, iterations of a movie is nigh impossible because bureaucrats and people with no imagination can't release a bloody movie and make it available in all formats. I had the original 2008, watched it in streaming, and then I lost it just before coming on this. So I was able to watch the remake, but then now I can't watch the original. And then I have to wait or sign up to 20 different streaming services to maybe watch one of these two, and it's pathetic. Oh, just on another tangent, because we love tangents in this show. Seen Pray for the Devil, thought it was okay. Yeah, I enjoyed the movie. I was expecting something completely different with that movie. I did a review on it, and I was pleasantly surprised, but then I fell into the boring tropes again, which just what are you doing? The final act was just, I don't know what they were trying to achieve there. But on to this movie. So Del, you've watched the 2008 version, is that right? So we'll focus on that for the
that one.
Yeah, that's the original Swedish version.
Yes. Yep.
Andy, you've seen both, I take it?
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So,
I love both of them. I love the
Sorry, it's a bit delayed.
No, appreciate that. That's why I'm trying to leave a wee bit of a pause.
Wow.
So what we'll do is we'll focus on the primary
the
2008 version, Swedish version, and then what we might do is just make references to the remake, if that makes sense, so that really there's not much of a difference. The story's basically told beat for beat. There are a few subtleties in terms of characters, but it's not like the remake was completely taking it down a different direction or anything. So you actually don't miss it. So I suppose the first question is, did this film need to be remade? like watching the original, and I know a lot of people have problems with subtitles. I don't. I like subtitled movies. I'm not a big fan of voiceover, dubbed in another language, because it just goes choppy and you don't get the same feeling.
Yeah, me too.
Where a physical actor in the moment can portray that, as opposed to somebody voicing over somebody else's performance, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Apart from studios want to make money, why do you think they remade this? Was it just to have an English version?
I think sometimes if you remake a movie,
Probably.
it's got you're going to see
Okay.
things you might not have seen.
Andy, what?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Yeah. Yeah, we're having a slight delay, so it's that's why I'm just you might hear moments of silence, folks, but it's just to give everyone a chance to get part of the conversation. No, like I wasn't opposed to the idea of a remake. I just thought that the original one had unique characters. It was a unique story.
Carry on.
Oh, what's going on there? Oh, right. Yeah, this is a unique story in terms of like the vampire genre. It goes against the grain. I think there was something definitely captured here that they keep remaking and Respell just told a story. Maybe just because a lot of people do have problems with foreign movies and don't like subtitles while they're watching. That could justify it. At least the remake didn't destroy the original, if that makes sense. It didn't try to do anything new or fancy. It just retold the story, which was cool as far as I was concerned. I have more problems with the TV show, if I'm honest. I thought
that I never saw.
Right, well, don't, because it completely sabotaged. It completely sabotaged the story. It changed the dynamic. So here we have essentially a master and a servant.
Mm-hmm.
They changed it to a father and daughter.
Oh, weird.
And then they brought all these other characters in, and it just and you can tell as well that like by the end of the first season they were trying to drag this story out, and it just became generic TV. And
no.
I was annoyed at the end of it, and then I didn't even, like I said, I couldn't get to see the second season. I'm probably glad I didn't, because I could just see where it was going by the end of season 1. I was like, they're going to spin this and drag it out, and it becomes something completely different. Oh, welcome, Chris, to the chat. Good to have you again. Chat's starting to fill up here and get busy. It's always good. That's why I like doing these live. I know it's a bit of a pain in the backside, trying to get everything set up. But
hi, Chris.
This is why I like doing this, because you don't know where the conversation is going to go. You get elements from other people while we're having the chat, and it's just like a few guys are in the coffee shop or in the bar after going to see a movie. That's why I like this.
Yeah, it's like hanging out. It's a lot of fun. Hi to everybody listening, by the way.
So let's talk about the characters. So
yeah, hi.
What did you think of Ellie/Abby? So in the original one, she's Ellie, and then Abby in the remake. To me, this is definitely one of the most interesting vampire characters out there.
She's very unique. She is in the original. I felt like she was appropriately cold and distant for being a vampire, because often in stories, vampires aren't really going to warm up and relate to humans a whole lot because of what they are. Mm-hmm. But that also depends upon the author's interpretation of what a vampire is. Versus the remake, she was engaging, appropriately engaging, and she was a little bit warmer than the original vampire was. It took her less in the remake. It took the vampire less time to warm up than I think, but I think in the original the vampire was using the coldness to weed out the kid, to try and see if the kid would be something useful to her later, and accidentally ended up liking the kid and wanting to get close to the kid and make a connection.
Yeah, because this is essentially a love story.
Mm-hmm.
But it's originally through the whole master-servant dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very elegantly played, I think. The whole master-servant dynamic, because when you see Ellie and Hakan, my Swedish is terrible, by the way, i.e. non-existent, so I'm going to butcher these names, but Hakan, it's definitely a master-servant relationship, but it might have started out as love, or it might have been a ruse. We don't know. And in the original, we don't get that. We don't understand that, you know what I mean? Whatever, although we see photographs and that from the start, definitely the relationship has devolved. And there's an almost bitterness between them.
Yeah, it's like I have to say, oh, I'm sorry.
No, Zen, did any of you pick up on that?
It's like I have to stay with you because you helped me and you're a tool, but I don't want you in my life anymore. But you helped me out by getting me blood. But beyond that, I can't tolerate you.
And do you think Hakan felt that, like, there's definitely a resentment between the two of them?
I think Hakan was tired and longed for whatever life that he feels the vampire stole from him. But I think, I think the resentment would explain Hakan looking at the vampire and like, you stole my life from me, you stole my youth from me. Whereas in the beginning, it may not have started out like that, because you get the sense of she met Hakan when he was a child. And I think it flashed back to that, if I'm remembering right, a few times.
It was the photo booth photographs. Remember when Oskar went in? The apartment.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. And it just, something between them just soured, and he wants something that his resentment, I guess, is telling him that the vampire took something from him and he wants it back, and he can't have it. So he's left with like schlubbing around for the vampire, and he's tired of it. And they're tired of each other. And I think both of them want something new. And Hakan's lonely, but I think the vampire's lonelier, which is why I think she made such a connection with the little boy, because he was lonely and afraid and was tired of his life, and so was she. And I think in each other, they not only found a lot of release and a new life, a new lease on life.
Yeah, I can't help but like in her character to Interview with the Vampire. God, what you call?
I'm sorry.
Do you know Interview with the Vampire?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
God, what you call her?
Claudia.
Claudia, right? Who is essentially an adult trapped in a child's body because she was being a vampire.
Claudia,
right? Yep. Sorry, you know me with names, folks. I'm terrible. Can watch something 100 times and still forget people's names if it's not in my just my brain right there. But yeah, Claudia.
Oh, it happens.
But there's a slight difference here, because Claudia was essentially a full adult trapped in a child's body. But Ellie, the statement she makes is, yes, I'm 12, but I've been 12 for a long time. It's almost like she's in suspended animation, that she still has the thoughts and feelings of a 12-year-old, despite her long life. Do you think that's what makes this slightly different or unique in terms of a vampire story?
I think she versus Claudia acclimated a lot more to being a vampire.
I had a little.
Yeah, go ahead, Del. Sorry, Del, go ahead.
So delayed. I really liked Ellie's character. I really, really liked her character.
Yeah, she's a good character, and also it's nice to get away. Like, the whole concept of good and bad, good and evil, it's turned up in its head with this story. Let's be honest. There's a lot of grey area, there's a lot of ambiguity, and there's a lot of you making up your own mind, which I like. I'm sick of being preached to with movies or told this is the dichotomy, this is the dynamic. You must adhere. Listen, if you disagree, people will jump on you. This is one of the stories that is morally ambiguous and leaves it up to the viewer to make up their mind and how they feel about certain characters. Am I right with that?
Yeah.
I love her character a lot too. She seems really comfortable in her own skin with being a vampire. She seems to
The one problem
enjoy it.
I think I have.
Yeah, what's up?
Is that the fact that they're so young. I think they could have made the characters a little bit older.
They did in the remake. But also, I think that adds to the horror of this, because I don't know about you, I get frustrated with teen movies or child movies, and they're being played by mid-20s actors or actors sometimes in their 30s, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. But actually having child actors play children in a horror movie, that's the way it was portrayed. And you know what I mean? When you have children in books, for example, as characters, that's what they are.
Mm-hmm.
So it adds to the whole unnerving aspect of this movie. And I think it's usually not done very well in horror, but this is done brilliantly. And that's what I'm talking about, the moral ambiguity. Because if they were played by adults,
unnerving.
You wouldn't have the same. Like
Yeah,
that's where the remake loses the impact, because what do you call her? Chloe Moretz was in her early 20s at that point. So she's an adult playing a child, and it's just and I think the guy who played Owen wasn't much behind her. So they're not children. But you lose the impact of a vampire being in a child's body unless it's played by a child actor. And that's where I think this story once again bucks the trend. All right, no, okay. Yeah, so I think you lose the impact if you didn't have child actors, and particularly young, like almost pre-pubescent.
Yep, no.
They're just on the verge of puberty. And it makes the whole, like the dynamic between her and Hakan, for example, that bit more sinister.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah.
And it's not a father-daughter relationship. And I think that's part of why you miss that until like towards the end, when he goes out for the last time. That when she strokes his cheek, it's not a father and child. And if it wasn't a child actress doing it, you wouldn't have got that impact. And that's why I'm saying, morally, you have to make up your own mind about this, the rights and wrongs and how you feel. And then once again, horror is that uncomfortable feeling, isn't it? That's what we'll crave. We don't get scared anymore, because we embrace the monsters. But what horror still has left to offer is just making you go, oh god, that's not right. And this is one of the movies that goes there.
I like in the remake the way Chloe Grace Moretz. I always mess up pronunciation of her name, but the way she carried over the horror and monstrousness of being a vampire, I loved that, the way she did that. I thought it was wonderful. That was great. I mean, the original, she did a great job too, but I thought Chloe brought a lot to it as well.
I feel sorry for that wee girl. I really want to like her, but she's been in some dog shit movies.
Yeah.
She's been in some awful movies, and I think she's been done a disservice by her agent. She is one of those unique. She's not your like traditionally blonde. She's something about her. But I think because she's done some awful, terrible movies, especially in the horror genre, she hasn't had a chance. But this is one of the movies where she's had a chance to actually play a good character and bring something to the table. And what could have been a really bland remake actually had its own flavor. And it didn't depart too much, as even though they are older, they still had that look. But the original had that starkness of, these are children. This is the story because it involves children. And I believe in the book, Hakim was actually a pedophile. In this, the don't really hint at that. The shy away, in both versions. But it's there, it's underlying kind of, oh God, this isn't right.
Yeah, that's
Because
awful.
he's got older.
The first version.
Yeah. The development, we've kind of touched on this, but the whole...
The first version, I didn't...
You didn't pick up on that? No, it's not there in the first version. It's this weird resentment of...
I actually thought that... No, I actually thought that he was her father. Huck.
Yeah. It's kind of... And I think that's where the resentment was. Because what the original relationship was, and we're seeing this, it's almost like it's playing out again with Oskar. What started out as romantic love went the other direction. Where in the normal friendships or protection can turn into romantic love, but this started out as romantic love, and then as he's got older and she hasn't, at some stage it's become twisted, and maybe he didn't... He became disgusted with himself for his romantic feelings as he got older, and then it became an almost bitterness, and that's, like I said, it's all subtext. It's not beating you over the head with what's going on. You have to kind of try and look at this and figure out what's happening. And yeah, and like I said, it's a master-servant relationship, essentially.
Yeah, I get the feeling it started some way already through.
Ellie could tear him apart if she so chose.
Oh, yeah.
He could open the blinds during the day and fry her to pieces if he so chose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, there's a lot of...
Yep.
There's a lot of power dynamics being played out here, which could be quite heavy for the casual audience. How do you think that kind of played out? Did you pick up on that, or was it something that you glossed over, or is it something that really made you intrigued about this story?
I like the fact that you felt those things and you saw them in the relationship, but it really didn't go into it too much. I think it would have detracted from it.
I really...
Yeah, you're good, Dale. Go ahead. Yeah, you're good. Go ahead, Dale.
Sorry. Carry on. No, I was just delayed. Sorry. Carry on, Andy.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I don't want to talk over you, Dale, because the delay.
Like Andy was saying.
Okay,
yeah,
sorry.
Yeah, you're up, Andy. Go ahead.
Like I was saying, I think if they went into their relationship too much and what was going on there under the surface, it would have taken away from the movie. So I'm glad they didn't. But I think it added to the character development and to the progression of the movie that you knew there was some tension, there was a problem there, but not exactly sure what it was. But the fun of it is that it's left up to interpretation, like we've just been talking about.
Yeah. Dale, go ahead. What do you think? Yeah, I agree.
There's just so many different elements in the movie that, like you were saying about real life issues, bullying.
Yeah, and that can be as horrifying, even though it's a supernatural movie. The real world problems and elements, that's what makes this more impactful.
Yes.
I always use The Witch as an example of this. A tight drama told that the supernatural element is only an extra layer, but the story itself, Ellie could quite easily not have been a vampire for most of the story to hold true and still be impactful, if that makes sense. Because if you take out the vampire, the fact that she was living with a serial killer who's not her father, there's so much to play with there. So a well-told story and something that there's a whole disturbing element to this. That's enough in a story in itself, but add the supernatural aspect and it just takes it to another level. And I think that's what's so fascinating about this tale. Dale, what do you think? I'll go with Dale first. What I'll do is I'll just say, Dale, what do you think? And then I'll say to Andy, and that gives you a chance to.
Okay, cool. What I really, really enjoyed was that they stuck to the traditional type of vampire, can't eat food, doesn't go outside during the day. I found that really refreshing, actually, because there've been a few vampire movies that have been coming out that try to take away from the traditional sense of what we think a vampire should behave and their traits and all that sort of stuff. I'm glad that they actually stuck to that. I really, really enjoyed the 2008 version. Is obviously I couldn't watch the 2010 one. I couldn't find it anywhere. But I really love the moodiness of it. I don't know if the 2010 version, because I haven't watched it, has been able to get away with the coldness, the tones, the scenery. I mean, that was just amazing. I really enjoyed it, just from beginning to the end, really. It's set in Stockholm, I think it is. So besides the fact it was kind of a Dexter meets Twilight type of movie, I thoroughly enjoyed it. And although it was a little bit off-putting having two 12-year-olds involved in the movie, like as their characters are 12, like I did say, I would have liked them to have been a little bit older, because of the little scene that they show. I don't know.
That's
anyway,
what what I brought at the start. I'm like, holy crap, I hope he's a stunt double, because I'm like, I don't need to be saying that.
Yeah.
Andy, you know the scene we're talking about?
Yeah, I think when she was changing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I missed that the first time I watched that movie, and when I watched it recently, I'm like, oh shit, oh no, they didn't just do that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh dear.
Whoa, that just happened.
They can't have used. They can't have done that with a 12-year-old. They had to have used and just in case, we basically almost got full nudity.
I don't know why.
It's kind of, let's be honest. Oscar's character was a peeping Tom. Like, it's in both versions, he's portrayed that he's a peeping Tom. Like, there's a lot of sexual undertone and weirdness in this, and that's what makes it kind of, close to the knuckle. In terms of like any sort of movie, this is really on the line. Let's be honest. Oscar is sexually aware. He's,
it is on the line. Yep.
We see this from the very start when he's got the telescope and he uses the spy on his neighbors, and it tones it down massively in the remake. But in the original version, it's there. There's a creepy element to him as well. Like, he's not an innocent, yeah, he's bullied, he's strange, but he's not an innocent. And I think that's what makes this.
Oh.
He is a bit of a creep, let's be honest. Well, the only glances, but he spies on people. He would be the type that would be, if he get the chance, sneaking into the girls' locker room. He's just that, he's got that thing about him. His character, obviously, nothing to do with the actor, but, the character is. is that sort of person, and is that what
Yeah.
drew Ellie to him? Because it seems to be with Hakan, he's the same sort of person. He's got a lot about him too, and you know when you say people have a type. What do you think of that? Andy, what do you think of, or sorry, Del, go ahead first. What do you think of that?
Interesting angle. Yeah, I didn't think of that.
Yeah, that's why I've and this is one of the movies on its second or third watch you get more into it. You know, it's you peel away more layers of what's going on.
I think they found more, like I was hinting, excuse me, hinting at before, more freedom and release, like a new lease on life in each other. I think that's the initial thing that attracted both of them to each other. The newness of each other, and he could tell right away there was something not living or not natural about her, and I think that really drew him in. And then they slowly found that they were, through him saving her saving him with the bullying, and him realizing quickly that she wasn't human, and then actually realizing there are actually things like this in the world, really sparked that love of the newness between them. I think that's what drew them to each other initially. Like it was unspoken at first, but it didn't take long for it to bloom.
Yeah, definitely unique characters, but once again, morally ambiguous. There's not a good guy, good girl. Like they've got their dark sides. They've got their like fetishes, if that makes sense. It's there. This is being played with, and that's what I think people will find. We've seen 100 vampire movies. We've seen people getting torn apart. That's easy, but it's this aspect of it that makes this gritty and disturbing in a way that very few movies manage to achieve. What did you think about?
It feels very, very real, as in, they could be living right next door to us.
Absolutely. The question I have to ask with all the versions,
right next to us, and we wouldn't even know.
Yeah.
It just gave us had a real good sense. Yep.
But the question I have to ask, they're not destitute. They can afford to move around.
Realism.
Why couldn't they afford to carry with them a decent set of blackout curtains? Like, nothing screams something's weird here than cardboard boarded up against the window, especially in an apartment complex where you're under scrutiny. You know, people watch what people do in smaller spaces. It's almost like he's wanting to get caught. He's screaming out, because when you start cardboarding up, you're instantly setting yourself up as something weird. It's against the norm. Why wasn't the... And I'll go on about we'll talk about his technique for harvesting blood, but why wasn't their operation a bit more slick, do you think? That was a bit I found jarring about the story. As it all seems to be like duct tape and flipping cardboard pieces and this haphazard kind of thing, but they've been doing this for years. You would have thought they would have had this all perfected by now, that they don't stand out. Sorry?
I'm sorry, Colin. I think he just got tired of it all. So he's getting sloppy. He didn't want that life much anymore. He didn't want to be connected.
It's almost like he's screaming to get caught, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think so too.
Do you think that's what started Ellie?
Yeah.
Because it didn't get the impression Ellie wanted to give up. Like you said, she's comfortable. She embraces what she is, which always makes a good character. Somebody that's comfortable with what they are. She had no desire to.
Yeah, and she was quite willing just to let. She was quite willing to get rid of him at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she did essentially toss him aside. Let's be honest. Like at the end, she, it was very cold. He offered his throat to her at the last, and
Yeah.
she just took it and didn't even blink twice. There was no remorse there or like sadness.
Yeah.
And
Moved
that's
on
what
with the next.
and that's what I'm talking about. We see the initial resentment, like it's both parties resent each other, which kind of led to this whole sequence of events.
Totally.
I would recommend Near Dark. It's a good vampire movie and different. Yeah,
Love
might
that
check that
movie.
out. Might add that to the list. Yeah,
Love
I'm bored with the generic movie, and what Dale alluded to earlier on was that you can't tell, and it's something I've talked about in this channel, and just I'm absolutely sick and tired of the whole virus thing, and you can't tell the difference now between a vampire, a flipping zombie, or a werewolf. You know what I mean? It's all this homogenous mess of generic monster, and it's all virus led. And the TV show did that. The TV show made it about a virus and finding a cure, and we lost the supernatural aspect of a vampire. This is where I'm a traditionalist. I prefer traditional values of my monsters. I want them to be supernatural creatures.
Oh,
Forgive me
really?
for like enjoying that aspect. That's the whole point of the supernatural, is you can't explain it. You can't define it in the test tube. It's otherworldly. Therefore, you
Oh,
can't.
that's awesome. Yep.
That's what drew me in. The Universal monsters was what drew me into the horror genre. Frankenstein's monster, Dracula, the Wolfman, Creature from the Black Lagoon, all them creatures that weren't human, they became something else.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't a flipping virus that you can do in a lab and cure. In fact, it would be better if the scientists were completely stumped and couldn't even think of an answer. But this stupidity, and once again, back to art reflects the world, and we've definitely lost that art of storytelling, especially in the mainstream sort of media and creation. And the problem is, because they've burnt every other franchise to the ground, they're starting to rely on horror more to make their money, and they're bringing their stupid shite into horror movies. And this is one of the gems that managed to escape that, thankfully.
I agree.
Yeah, there was a couple of different characters that were kind of glossed over in the remake, but they may give it another layer. For example, Lack, the character of Lack, and his partner and the two friends that lived in the apartment complex, they were a whole dynamic, which wasn't really was kind of left to the side. Why do you think the remake decided to completely gloss over them characters? I suppose I'll ask Andy this one, saying he's seen the remake. Why do we think we didn't get Lack, and instead had him as a policeman, a generic friggin' police constable, where you had somebody here with an actual vested interest in destroying the vampire?
I think it was important to move the story along, especially to say that there's a time limit on the vampire staying anonymous, and the vampire knew it.
Mm-hmm.
And like when she attacked the person under the bridge and that person went to the hospital, she had to know before that what was going to happen. But
yeah, Lack's
she was
girlfriend.
Hungry. She was hungry in the moment, and it happened. But the cop was, I think, instrumental in that part of the in showing that part of the movie that, okay, from here on in, things are going to get really bad, and there's just no hiding stuff anymore. So the vampire is going to have to come up with something to react to the situation, to deal with it and make it better, because the vampire just can't let this go. Especially when the lady went all torched up with the sun after. That cat was definitely out of the bag then. The cop was never going to leave that stuff alone.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the cop wasn't going to leave that alone before, but that definitely clinched it.
Do you think they overdid it a bit in the remake? Like the first opening the blinds and her bursting into flames was horror. You know what I mean? That was just holy crap. and the intensity of it. I
No,
don't know why.
I love both of them.
I don't know why they tried to ramp it up, whether eating her own. In the remake, they had her exactly the same scene, except when they pulled the blind, she was eating her own arm. I don't know what that added. It just it took away, like, it done it so brilliant in the first scene. Yeah, they had her like eating her
She
own
was
arm.
eating her own arm.
Yeah, and then she blew up, and that's the difference. I don't know why they threw that in.
Oh, I love that personally because I think she couldn't really.
God.
She was losing. Oh, I'm sorry, Dale.
No, Dale, go ahead.
Nah.
All right, Dale's good, right? Yeah, you enjoyed that scene?
Oh, I love it.
Scene?
Oh, yeah, I love that scene.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't know. It was almost like they're trying too hard to add something to an already like disturbing, gritty story. And it's a laziness of Hollywood, I think, to rely on special effects now than storytelling, which I just find a shame, especially when they don't need to.
What about I quite liked the cats. I like the cats eating the woman.
Oh yeah, when she got attacked, yeah, it was they didn't do that in they kind of crossed over that as well, but it's like yeah, it's all about being a predator, isn't it? If you're a predator and food presents itself, going to do what you're going to do. And I think that's another aspect of this movie, because we see it not just with Ellie. Ellie's the ultimate predator, but we also see it with the bullies. They're predators too. They're looking for easy prey. And once again, it's not just the master-servant dynamic, but the predator-prey dynamic too, we see.
Yes, they are.
It's that whole thing, like, you're like myself, you're animal lovers, but you understand if we're locked in a house, there's no food or water, and you collapse unconscious, your dog or cat, or Mikey has birds, are going to eat you if you're the only food source. That's just the way of it. And you see that with Ellie too, that, yeah, I'm starving, you're a food source, yes, we've been together for 40 or 50 years.
Yep.
But, yeah, I'm hungry and you're food, end off. And that, whatever relationships before goes out the window. And we're down to the basics, of survival of the fittest. And that's, I think, played out brilliantly in this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, let's talk about the bullies. Because they are just as instrumental to this plot as anything else. And there's even a lure with them, because when we see Johnny, he's the lead bully, and he's the one that torments Oskar, just can't leave him alone. He's just latched on. This is a prey animal. This is how I'm going to vent out my frustrations. What did you think of, I'll ask Annie first this time. What did you think of that whole dynamic that was brought into play? Was that a good storytelling arc? Could it have been done differently, or was it just right the way it was?
I think it was great the way it was. I think it really helped. Why can't I remember his name now? The main character, it's escaping me.
Oskar.
Yeah, I think it really helped Oskar's character development, and it brought him closer to the vampire. And I loved when he and his friends got his at the pool, especially in the new the remake scene, because it showed a lot more of what she was doing to him, and I love that so much when she destroyed the kid.
Even before the pool, what about the ice skating scene, the frozen pond?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's when we first see him, and this is where I would have to disagree with Dale. Dale, you think that it wasn't a good idea having these characters as 12-year-olds, but he is scrawny as hell. There's nothing to him. If he was a well-built, early, like fully developed adult, you wouldn't have the same impact. But the fact that he's a 12-year-old and he's a weed, and he's no definition whatsoever. He can be picked up in one hand and shaken about. You know, his physicality, I think, adds to this. And that moment in the pool, or not the pool, the pond, where he finally decides to fight back with a stick against his tormentors.
Yeah.
And this is because of Ellie, you know, coaching him.
Yeah.
I don't think that scene would have had the same impact if he was a 17, 18-year-old or being played by a 20-year-old actor. I don't think it would have had the same impact. Does that alter your opinion at all, Dale, about the actual choice of actors for this?
It kind of does. It's still a bit borderline for me being 12. I was kind of hoping they were going to be like at least 14 or 15 or something, but I mean, I've got a 12-year-old son, so it's kind of a little bit in my face, but then again, you know, it is reality, and I like the fact that I did like the fact that they were young enough that it was all raw and new, and you know, that made it quite authentic. Especially, you know, at that age, I suppose, you know, hormones and all that sort of stuff carrying on. It kind of linked them together romantically as well, like you know, what they call puppy love and all that sort of stuff. I can see that probably wouldn't have worked with older characters. And then it would have got way too complicated if it was getting into adulthood. So it's not that I didn't like the idea of the two youngsters. Well, I mean, because basically you've got to look at the fact that obviously Oscar's living in a family dynamics where he's only getting to see his dad in the weekends or something like that. So he's pretty much left to his own devices, I think. So that was the reality of it, and that is very true, especially at that age, you know. So I think that's why they fell for each other straight away, was the fact that they were both vulnerable young children. So it did work. It didn't make me feel sick or anything. So
but it made you feel uncomfortable. It made I'm not advocate, you know what I mean? It made me feel uncomfortable too, because I'm like, you know, when you think about what's going on, you're like, but then that's why I'm enjoying, because it's pushing boundaries and making me think. That's why I enjoyed it and found it necessary. Andy, what did you think about, you know, especially that scene with the pond, the age of the characters? Did that disturb you? Did you have a problem with it? Or did you think it was just right? What did you think?
No, I thought it was great, because if the actors were older, it'd be a little more hard to relate to the scene and the plight of the kid and being bullied in that whole situation, and it wouldn't have been as enjoyable when he did fight back and hit him in the ear with the stick. But at the age they are, all of us, most everybody on this planet, when they were younger, got bullied. Some a lot worse than others, and we remember those things. And when we see it in a story, in art, we not only feel vindicated, we relate to it, but when the child fights back, we feel more that vindication. We get an exhilaration of there is a way out. It will have a happy ending. We can fight back. We don't just have to take it. And we rejoice a little bit inside when we see that. So when he whacked him in the ear, and it wasn't just a light little love tap, it was like he was trying to take his head off. I was like, yes, that's amazing. Yes, kick his ass. And so I think it worked wonderful.
Yeah, it's, like I said, because this movie's so borderline and it's really testing the boundaries, it's easy to go, oh, I just want this to be nice and neat and comfortable, but then that's the point of horror. Point of horror is to take you out of the comfort zone. Oh, the world isn't nice and neat and comfortable, and everything doesn't fit into place, and what I think's okay isn't necessarily going to be that way in another dynamic. And I still like to be challenged. I don't want to be at a stage in life where I think I've figured it all out and there's no surprises left, and everything just fits my worldview. And I think that's a problem with society as well, that everyone wants their little box and they don't want challenge in any way, and that's kind of pushed on the rest of us. And actually, I've talked about this before. Have you found as well with the horror like fandom, there's a lot of conformity. It's really, really strange, but for an alternative group of people, there's a lot more conformity than the normies, to say, for example. Have you experienced that? And does this movie like challenge that as much as it challenges you as a viewer? Annie, do you want to go on first?
Yeah, I'm actually glad you brought this up, because especially with the vampire genre, this movie answered and showed something that I have never ever seen any story or vampire movie ever tackle. In the scene where he was taunting her about what would happen if a vampire comes in uninvited, and it actually showed it, and they did it in a way that was amazing. I loved it. I'd never seen that in a vampire movie or story.
Yeah.
I will always remember that, how she just stood there trembling and bleeding out,
Amazing.
and he became so afraid for her. He was like, I invite you, stop. He didn't want her to die. I love that whole scene. That was my favorite scene of the whole movie, that and the pool scene. But yeah, the scene I just described, that's my absolute favorite one. I love that.
Yeah, I was going to get to that actually. Yeah, because that is
tearing up.
Yeah,
that is the only time that has actually been tackled.
yeah.
And that's what I said. It's been glossed over from Dracula, and this whole nonsense of it's a virus and it could be transmitted and cured and stupidity is really bugging me, because it's destroying one of the original lores of the backbone of storytelling. Never mind horror, but storytelling is one of the Bram Stoker's Dracula is like one of the classics. We wouldn't even have half the stuff out today. Bram Stoker, Mary Shelley, Anne Rice, you name it. If it wasn't for those guys, we wouldn't have the wealth of storytelling or imagination that we do today.
Yeah.
But this is the only movie that I'm okay. What happens if a vampire doesn't get invited in and still tries? And yeah, both versions of the movie did the scene so powerfully.
Oh, I know. I loved it. Oh, I love it.
And we saw it. Wow.
Once again, it's back to the master-servant relationship, because it actually goes on its head. And then talk, power dynamics, which this movie's all about. We then have Ellie putting herself into Oscar's hands and actually transferring power to him, even for a short period of time, but still she does it. Now, this is someone who's not used to transferring power, because we see it with her relationship with Hacken. She is the leader, she's the owner, she is the one that holds the power. But in that instant, and this is where I'm wondering, you can't do that unless you're sure of the person.
I love that scene.
And was this where the relationship, I suppose it was that's my final thought, so maybe we'll leave it later, but was she doing something different? Did Oscar provoke something different in her, as opposed to, like, we don't know how long she's done this, how long she's been in existence, or how many servants she's had.
Yeah, you're so right. We don't know, do we? We don't know if she's just... Yeah.
And because you could almost think in this movie, correct me if I'm wrong, that she's only been a young vampire.
Just being a predator.
But it gives the impression that she's only been a vampire as long as she's been with Hacken.
Or is she lonely? Is she lonely? Is she... yeah.
Yeah, there's so much there to question, and that's why I like you're not given all the answers. You have to wonder, and this is why we have discussions, because that's a good movie, that's a good story when you can talk about it, and each person has their own thoughts on it. None of us are right or wrong because we don't know. but that's where it's fun to play with. And definitely that scene with her doing that, you think, nah, that can't be her. She can't use that technique with everybody because it's too much of a risk to take. Leaving yourself out that vulnerable to someone. If it's the
in the first movie, did you notice? Did you notice that you could actually see Ellie in the snapshot? It's like a snapshot of her as an old woman.
No, I missed that.
I don't think I saw that either. That's really cool.
You
Where
missed
was that?
it.
Yeah, what was that? When was that?
I only caught that the second time I watched it. You actually get, yeah. So when Ellie is basically lying on top of Oskar and saying, I want you to see what I want to see you, I want you to see my life. And then all of a sudden you just see this snippet of her as a haggard, warped looking old lady, and then it changes, and it's actually very well done. We get to see that she actually initially she's 12, but she's actually very, very old. So I found that really interesting.
God, I missed that completely. I'll have to. But every time you watch this movie, you bring I've seen it about half a dozen times.
Really?
Yeah. It's one of the it's one of them
Right.
ones. Honestly, it came out. I caught it by chance, and I was hooked. I was intrigued, and I have seen this a few times. But there's a difference between watching a movie and watching it to review it. I think you're starting to pick up on that. When you're watching a movie to talk about it afterwards, you see it with a different lens. You've done a couple of these now, Dale. Have you found that? When you're actually watching a movie with the purpose of reviewing it, you have a different focus. Yep. Have you found that, Andy?
Totally.
Yeah, Andy, this is your first movie review.
Yeah. So, yeah, definitely. Watching a movie, Oh, is that Andy?
Yep.
I'm saying, Andy, did you find a different experience watching this for the purpose of reviewing it than normally for entertainment?
I wanted to go back just a second and to touch on a little bit of what Dell was saying when Ellie was the old woman. Mm-hmm. That's one of the elements I love so much about storytelling and horror, and especially vampires, the symbolism. Because most of the time, in my opinion, they handle the symbolism so beautifully. And that scene that Dell described is such beautiful symbolism. And when the way she was so affected by when she came in without being invited. But to come back to what you said, Colin, about the movie reviewing, whether I was reviewing a movie or not, I would have the same. My perception wouldn't change. My enjoyment or the way that I see it wouldn't change. To me, it's all inclusive.
All right, cool. I've just found myself having to pay more attention than I normally would when I'm planning to talk about a movie afterwards to certain things than just watching for entertainment. There's a lot of movies I've watched for entertainment and I've forgotten.
I would say that too, Colin. Definitely.
I'm finding myself looking for things and patterns and wanting to make sure dynamics, between characters and what's not presented to you.
Watching a movie just for entertainment. Sorry, I'm talking over you.
No, I've stopped.
No.
No, it's just a delay. No, go ahead, Dan. Go ahead.
Okay. What I have found with reviewing, with watching. Okay, so what I found with watching movies, is that I I enjoy watching horrors, but I don't look at all the ins and outs of the things that I would be reviewing. So I do like to watch the movies we're going to review. I watch with the subtitles on, which is something I don't do if I'm watching it without reviewing a movie. And also I like to take little notes of things that that I find really interesting about the movie, whereas if I was just watching it for the sake of watching it, I would have missed most of the things that I actually watched in this movie. I mean, it's nearly 2 hours long. To get me to sit down and watch a movie for 2 hours is pretty impossible, but I really enjoyed it. So yeah, I like the last few movies we've reviewed, I will watch it like twice or maybe 3 times. I won't do that if I'm watching a movie for entertainment.
Yeah.
That's just me.
Yeah, sure enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. I only really take notes if there's a couple of us discussing it, so we'll have talking points. You know me, when I do most of my reviews, it's like almost immediately after I've watched the movie or as soon as, so I'm going and talking about it fresh. But you definitely have a different, when you want to talk about something, I just find just a different way of looking at it. But are you always looking at things like that then, Andy? When you're watching movies, have you always got that sort of critical eye or questioning about what's going on behind it? Has that always been your curiosity?
Oh, the all-inclusive feeling?
Yeah, but when you're watching a movie, what I'm talking about is when you're watching a movie to talk about it afterwards, do you look at it a different way? Are you viewing it through a different lens, a more critical one, or looking for deeper things? When you find you're going to have to speak about something afterwards, does your gears change in your brain while you're watching a movie, or have you always had that way of looking at it?
I've always had the way of looking at it. It's always, like you said, it's always all inclusive.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. Good to know. It's we all do things differently. It's interesting to understand how people view things, because then that changes your perception as well. Because if you've got a certain way, you get something different from it, and that's why 3 of us can watch the same movie and have different ideas.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
well written, of course.
Yeah.
What did you think of Haken's technique for harvesting blood? There's for someone that's done it so long, there's an almost chaotic aspect to it as much as it's organized. I thought in the remake it was more chaotic, but definitely in the first one, it's very clean and precise, and this guy's, he's honed his craft. You can kind of see it. What do you think of that?
I really thought my initial... Oh, I'm sorry.
Haken and his kill kit.
Yeah. What do you think, Andy, of that? The way he goes about it and how he's...
Yeah. Andy.
Oh, I think like you said, Colin, at first it was good.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he was I seriously thought he was trying to get the vampire caught because of how sloppy he got, and you could just tell his heart wasn't in it, and he just didn't seem to care as much. And like I said before, it seemed like it was a life he didn't want anymore, so he was like, yeah, I'm just going to half-ass this, I don't care.
Yeah, definitely the scene in the school before he gets caught. Like, that was more risks than he had to take. And I'll start with you first, Andy, with that. The scene in the gym locker room where he has the guy trussed up, like, that was, even though physically nothing happened to the guy yet, that was harrowing. Just the there wasn't music playing, it was silent. He had him hung up and you could actually hear every breath and gurgle, and it was a kid still, you know what I mean? And I think that's what makes this movie so more visceral, that they're not using adult actors. This was the kid tied upside down, hanging, and Hackham's about to kill him. What did you think of that scene in particular? Ali, you go first.
I think as a movie, with the movie and the story, I love the horror of it. But with the character of Hakan, I think he was going through the motions of, like, maybe at one point he had a taste for it and he actually enjoyed what he was doing. He enjoyed his work, but he was still going through the motions of the horror of the moment by doing to the kid what he did. But he was starting to get really sloppy, and he, like I said, his heart wasn't in it. But I think he himself was starting to slip from his role in life, and he just didn't care anymore. So that led to him not really taking the proper care that he should with his victim. There was just no heart in it. There was no life in it. So it didn't seem that he cared what was happening to the person. He didn't care what he was doing. He was just doing it to do it.
Playing scene for scene, between that, like the initial one was in the school, but the remake had him in the back of the car. I felt it got lost a bit in the remake of that, what you were describing, that he had lost his heart, because you see that he's doing it now and he's no enjoyment. It might sound harsh, but it was almost like a rapist who didn't enjoy raping anymore in the original. But in the remake, they really sanitized that a bit, which I thought was a bit of a shame, because they just made it just circumstances that he was in the back of the car. He was going to kill the guy, but his friend popped in, and that ruined the whole plan, and he got desperate. But in the first one, you actually see him just going, I don't like this anymore. I'm bored. I'm not getting the thrill from it. And he had the guy up. You know, he could have dispatched him quite quickly. And he's shining the torch around, and he's just giving himself away. The fact that he took a risk doing it while there was he knew he had two friends, and he didn't knock him out again. He just lost. You could just see he lost the thrill. Did you get that aspect in that scene, Dale, that he wasn't getting off on it anymore, and he's like, "Nah, I'm not enjoying this. Don't care." What do you think?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I could see that from the minute they got out of the taxi. And the way him boarding up the window with paper, cardboard or whatever. I mean, the scene, when he's left the blood behind, that was, was he trying to get caught? Does he realize how chaotic he's just made the whole thing? I like the beginning with him putting his kill kit together. I think that was really, really well done. A real good entrance into the movie. But I definitely got this. Oh, he's just so over it. He's been doing this for 100 years or whatever, and he's just had enough. I don't know if they could have pulled that off in the remake. But I definitely. Well, I did. The first time I saw the movie, I really did think he was the father. But then in the second and third time I watched it, I do get that slave master slave sort of storyline. So I think they did that. They pulled that off really well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to me the remake didn't. That scene, that was one that fell flat because it didn't really have the same impact. It was just an accident, and he was still prepared to do what he did, and it was just, he had no choice. But in that, he's sitting in the shower before he decides to pour the acid over himself, and he had a choice, and he could have got away from that. He could have done 100 things, but he just, I don't care anymore. Why do you think he poured the acid over himself? Because if he was in that state of mind, surely he would have just went meekly, but was there still maybe a bit of love there, or the duty, being dutiful?
Seriously, I don't get why he did that because it wasn't going to kill him. So
it was to make him unrecognizable. It was so he couldn't be identified. Remember, he gave when he put it in the jar in the first place. He didn't really suppose.
Yeah,
He didn't explain it to Ellie. He
okay.
explained it to the audience.
That's what I
By
thought
saying
so.
there that
Yeah.
it's
Did you also notice that he actually had scar marks for it?
Yeah, that's the thing, and actually that's something I just realized. He is a character that didn't focus too much on his face.
Yeah.
He was always in shadow, and when he wasn't in the mask, and hiding, you never got a full look at him. Did anybody else pick up on that? He was actually more mysterious than Ellie.
Yeah. Interesting.
I think you got a better look at him in the remake.
Yeah. But when he was shown, you could see that he had like burn marks.
Yeah, he's definitely been through something. There's no doubt there. He's not. It's not been a happy existence. Probably from a kill went wrong, or somebody's fought back. You don't know, but then that adds to the mystery because you don't know his full backstory. And it's only that time you see the photo booth photographs of him as a kid with Ellie that you get an idea of how their relationship came together. But for him to do that to cover himself, he still had a duty, a loyalty, I think, and that's what kind of played out, even though he'd given up. And I think that's why he offered himself to her at the end, just so readily. He was just ready to be done. There's a tragedy, you know what I mean? That's what I'm saying about the morally ambiguous characters. This is not a good person. Yeah. This is a murderer, somebody who relished what he does, even though one of the guys of
tragic
thing, but there is a tragedy list too, and that's why you have to you can't just make snap judgments on the characters and the way it's played. And like I said, it's been so long since I've seen a challenging movie, and even revisited this, it just reminds me why.
No. It's so much deeper than that.
We could do this again in a month's time and talk about the same movie and still get, new ideas would come, I think. And that's what I miss that about cinema. That's why I'm a fan of cinema, because cinema can do that so well. And it's not about budget. It's not about special effects. It's about characterization and storytelling. You get those two elements right, and flip the world's your oyster. And it's so everything's become so bland now.
Absolutely, Colin. Yep.
So let's talk about because who do you call him again? Lack and all that. That was kind of a side plot, but the final confrontation that between Ellie and Lack and the remake of the policeman, but that where he actually goes into the apartment and discovers what this is after obviously Haken's dead. This is where Ellie shows her true nature, as a predator, and Oskar hadn't seen this before. Obviously, he's had hints. How do you think that played out? Did we get the impact that we were hoping for? Andy, do you want to go first with this one?
I love that scene. I love that she wasn't afraid to show her true nature, and she needed to eliminate the problem, and she did. And when he saw her, it was obvious that he was seeing what she was, but he still saw in her what they first discovered in each other, which held him to her and didn't cause him to run away and fright or start yelling vampire, vampire, and then she would have to have killed him too. And in a way, I think he almost, when he looked at her all covered in blood, at least in the remake, I think part of him wanted the two of them to get to that situation, to get to that point, because then they could finally have their lives together.
Yeah, both versions did it. Like the original did it as well. Yes, the initial shock, because in the end, and that's back to the whole Oscar's still a child, and there's a whole world of difference between seeing something on a screen or an idea to actually physically happen in front of you. You know what I mean? We all know that. We can see 100 car crashes on TV, but you see one in front of you with the carnage and shoes. It's a completely different experience to, this. So him seeing that actual horror
I
and
think
brutality.
that's probably that's probably at the point where he decided that yeah, she's definitely a vampire.
It's the way he politely closes the door to give her privacy to do what she does. Almost deference to her. As a touching scene, it was done so well.
Yeah, that's right. I think that's well done. Yes. Yeah.
And then we think the movie's going a whole other direction, and that was going to be it. But then we get, and this is what makes this, I think, an iconic movie in horror, but also, I would talk about iconic horror scenes, like Nightmare on Elm Street when Johnny Depp's character is pulled into the bed. When we see, we see Candyman when he first appears in the mirror, rips it. When we see flipping Jason's
Regan going down the stairs backwards on The Exorcist.
Yeah. The swimming pool scene in this story, I think, has to be one of the most iconic scenes in horror. I don't know what you think about that.
Ooh, pool scene. Oh.
And this is where we see, because once again, predators prey.
That's my favorite scene in the whole movie.
Oh, absolutely. It was. And once I bring it back, the fact that it's done with children, children are always protected in horror movies. It's always that, we can't show this with youngsters, but this movie does not shy away from it. And that's once again that makes this just stick out. But we had a hint of it when we met Jimmy.
How much affection or how much can you give to bullies? It's like,
no, you can't. But once again, back to the morally ambiguous characters.
We want to see that they get some sort of justice.
Yeah. But at the same time, we want to hate Johnny. Yeah, we do. We want to despise him. He's the lead bully. But then when we meet his older brother Jimmy, and we see that the same things happen to
we want to hate Johnny.
Do you know what I mean? But when we see what's happened to him, and it's all about the cycle, patterns repeating themselves. So we'll see that Johnny is as much of a victim as Oskar was.
Yeah.
And we don't know Jimmy's story, but we can guess that this is like a whole cycle that's went back. That's because it's Jimmy that's led this revenge. And it's not even about his love for Johnny. It's about, that's one of our family. We have to be shown as strong. It wasn't even about any love for his brother. This was purely a power dynamic. The revenge scene, lighting the bin on fire, calling the teacher out. I wasn't. It was weird the way they did it in the remake because I had the gym teacher as a Russian, weird Russian bloke, which I thought was a bit comical, but didn't need to happen. I thought the teacher in the original was better played. Genuinely interested in his pupils and wanting to, get the most out of them. And the fact that the weedy kid wants to get strong, and the fact that he's, going to the after school club to make himself stronger so he's not picked on. There's respect, but the remake never played that dynamic out as well, I think. They tried to make it comical, which I thought this movie was all right for a bit of levity, but it just kind of took away from it. But that whole setup that you've basically got an adult, a young adult who's picking on kids. And I saw that growing up. I grew up in a rough neighborhood and it was weird times. And you actually had, you get in a fight with a kid and then a kid would come back with a full-grown adult to beat you up. It was freaking weird times. It just reminded me of that, growing up in Belfast, it was mad.
Yeah. Yep.
But you see this as a full-grown adult worrying about flipping kids. And he wants to actually kill or really maim Oskar, like proper venom, which he's actually worse than Johnny. That's why I'm saying, although you want to hate Johnny, you have sympathy for his character because you see that
he tried to drown him.
No, but it was Jimmy,
Yeah.
the older brother, that did it.
Yeah.
And you see Johnny as much of a victim in this whole power dynamic.
Yeah, Jimmy. Yeah. Yep.
What do you think of that, Andy? Did you pick up on that?
Yeah, but a little bit, but I feel differently. I don't think whatever someone goes through, it doesn't give you the right to hurt other people just because you went through something awful too. I don't indulge that. I don't think it's right to indulge that. I don't have much humanity for it. Not trying to sound awful, but yeah, no. If you're going to, nothing you go through gives you the right to hurt another human being because it wasn't that human being's fault. So if you're going to hurt somebody else because of what you've gone through, you deserve what you get. Sorry.
No.
Yeah, but that's
No.
But once again, it's about pushing boundaries and it's challenging. The world is not black and white. That's that's what makes it interesting. How did he get to that point? And then you see the more extreme, more evil. You know what I mean? You see, understanding doesn't mean condolence of something. There's a completely different. That's two completely different things. Understanding how somebody gets there doesn't mean, oh, well, that's perfectly fine then. No offense, mate, but that's a very American way of thinking. Oh, black, you know, blah, blah, blah. You know, we're not saying that. What we're saying is that it's interesting to be challenged.
It is.
And not just think of the goodie, the baddie, and to look behind. Because how can you fix anything? Or how can you understand yourself if you're never challenged? And that's what
depends on intuition.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, if you've just I think the worst people are ones that had a comfortable lifestyle, have never been challenged in their lives, can be so absolute about everything, and then they're the ones that who, when their world falls apart, they're the ones climbing up bell towers with flipping sniper rifles. You know what I mean? We've seen that 100 times. It's always the ones that, you know, flipping rose-tinted glasses. The minute they get shattered, they're the ones that break and fall apart.
Yeah, totally.
And that's why I'm saying this is not a movie for the general audience or the casual viewer. This is, you know what I mean? There's some deep stuff, and it's not just even about the suggested pedophilia or the child sex, you know what I mean? Not even the sexual connotation. There's so much more in this that's woven in. And that's what I'm talking about, power and the dynamics of people and what leads people down a certain path. And you even see Johnny in this last scene, which makes it even more intense. He's like, holy shit, this is too much for me. And you saw him at the start reveling. He was okay when it was a certain level. He's being the big lad and he wasn't being challenged in himself. So he's giving the wedgies, he's stealing the lunch money. That's all fine. But when it comes down to the reality of actually encountering an evil entity, and I'm not talking about Ellie here, I'm talking about Jimmy, someone with darkness in them, who genuinely, either way, he wants to hurt Oskar, and it's a sadistic game he's playing, and you even see Johnny being faced with that. It's like, that's too much for me. That's a place I don't want to go, and it's just interesting seeing that dynamic being played out right before, but it's too late. If that makes sense, it's too late for redemption. Is that your cat? Do you understand where I'm coming? Why I find this so fascinating, this scene, and why it's such an iconic.
Family's turned up.
All right, yeah, but do you understand where I'm coming from? Why this is such an iconic horror scene, and why there's so much played up before the actual action takes place? Because I don't think it would have the same impact if we didn't see that play out.
Oh yeah.
Like in this, the two henchmen, Connie and Kenny, they're nothings at the end of the day. They just go with the strongest. You know what I mean? They're weak hurdlings. They just go with the strongest character.
I actually felt felt so sorry for those kids at the end of it.
Yeah, those two, because they're just
Yeah.
dumb kids who really have no inclination of what's going on.
Yeah.
But with
Yeah, they are.
they just follow the strongest character, if that makes sense.
No.
But that's not forgivable either, because if that's all you do is go with the loudest voice and
Yeah,
follow the character,
that's right.
you sign yourself up for the fate. No, complacency as well isn't is just as bad as actually committing the act.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. I think Johnny could have went on a redemption
Yeah, I
arc.
don't think Johnny would have instigated anything like that. I think it was just
I was over. I think that
Jimmy.
was the minute
Yeah.
and that's why I brought up the frozen pond scene. That was over between those two the minute that happened, and that's with so many bullies. The minute you, I had to learn that myself at a young age. The minute you just lift your fist, you plant the biggest one.
Mm-mm.
It's over. So to me, let me know what you think. At the pawn scene, the dynamic between Oskar and Johnny was over because Johnny stood up for himself and hurt him badly, and he crumbled immediately once the reality of pain, hit him, and the fact that he pushed the kid so far that the kid was prepared to hurt him. That changed the dynamic. That would have been over, but it was the introduction of Jimmy that spurred it on.
Mm.
And with Jimmy, you see a really dark character.
That's
He's
right.
actually, I would say he was worse than Hacken.
Yeah, I totally agree.
What do you think of that, Andy?
Yep.
I think it was good for the story, but I don't think it had as big an impact to everything. But it was an interesting thing to see, and it was interesting to see more of the background on the bully, so you get more of an idea of his character. But to have that be like a main focus or a goal in the movie, I don't think so too much. But it was great for the scene. It was great for the progress of the movie, for the succession of the story.
Yep, because there was a danger. There's so many elements in this. Any one of them could have overtaken the other and derailed the main story. I think what makes this so good is the fact that they brought enough in, but they held it in check that it didn't overshadow the main story, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
They managed to rein back just enough to let the main story carry on, where any one of these other aspects could have overshadowed and destroyed the plot. But this is where I'm talking about good storytelling, and this is where we see an example of it. They're able to weave so much of this in, but without overshadowing the main story, which I really enjoy, because we've seen people like too many cooks spoil the broth, so they try and throw too much stuff in. We see movies made by committee, and they're just conjoined messes. Nothing fits together, and it all trips over each other, and you get bloody exhausted. You're like, is this ever over yet? With this movie, and the point you made, Del, about it being 2 hours long, like, long horror movies usually don't work. The minute they make a horror movie like 2 hours long, you lose something. But the runtime seems to be just right for this movie because it needs the time to let those elements breathe.
Yep, I agree.
What do you think of the runtime of this? Did you think, because it's longer than most horror movies, Andy, did it need to be this long?
I thought the runtime was great. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was good.
So because there's so many elements, it needed the longer runtime, do you think, to let these elements get woven in properly?
For this movie, yes, definitely.
Yep, and this is where, like I said, the swimming pool scene, the actual action, and the way it was done in the effects, like, it wasn't CGI or anything. That using the pool and the quiet of being underwater, so powerful. I don't think I've seen another movie that's had that sort of impact. It's hard to get, like, the atmosphere of this was brilliant. I don't think it would have worked if he had got out of the pool. Just the cleverness of using that.
What I really enjoyed about the swimming pool. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. This delay. What I really enjoyed about the swimming pool scene is the way it was artistically delivered. We didn't get to see the what Ellie ended up doing with them until we saw out of the pool and we see them on the side of the pool. I think that was done really well. I think that's why that scene worked so well, was because it was artistically delivered in a way that we know what's happened, but we actually didn't get to see it from Ellie's point of view. We got to see it from under the water, and I just thought that was just amazing how they do. I love it when horror movies can pull off that sort of concept of something, diabolical has happened, but we didn't actually get to see it. If you can pull that off, I think you've got yourself a really good movie. And I've only seen that work in a couple of movies, actually. So I think that they did that really well, in my opinion.
Yeah, what do you think, Andy?
I would love to have seen everything from Ellie's point of view. I was disappointed that we didn't get to see more of it, but I did like that they did show a little more of what she was doing in the aftermath of it in the remake than the original. Because in the original, you definitely knew what was going on, you saw what was happening, but the remake showed you just a little bit more of it to satisfy your appetite and your hunger for like the horror carnage. That's what I wanted to see. But I mean, the way they did it was wonderful too, because there was something to be said for leaving it up to the imagination. Because oftentimes in a movie, if they don't show you a lot, that what your imagination can conjure up can be more enjoyable than what you're seeing. So it'll add to what you're seeing. But in this case, I wanted to see things from Ellie's point of view. But overall, big picture, it didn't take away from any of the enjoyment of the scene for me. I loved it.
I'm glad in the remake they didn't turn into an action flick, because that's always a danger.
Huh.
If you know where I'm coming from, whether it doesn't be horror anymore, it's an action flick and dancing around. That would have been, I think that would have ruined it. To me, the body parts plopping in the water, in the silence, then being punctuated with it just plop, and it's over. And then that kind of symbolically solidifies their relationship, I think, as much as, there's still that love story aspect, which I just think is brilliant amongst absolute carnage and brutality. That's it. There's a love story there too. The fact that she was prepared to come back for him.
Yeah, it's sweet.
Didn't need to. There was a sweetness to it. Just that makes you, I'm a sick puppy. I'm like going, ah. There's something body parts everywhere, blood, and it's like you're still going, ah, those two sweet kids.
Yeah.
Oh man, oh dear. But what can I say? That's why we're sick puppies and love this sort of stuff, because it's
horror rocks.
Oh yeah, so much.
Yeah, that's why. Once again, that's why it's not a movie for normies. Sorry, guys, but please don't start off with this. If you think I've never watched a horror movie, don't start with this. Give yourself warmed up first.
No normies.
So, final thought, because it wraps up, and then obviously Oskar leaves with Ellie. Is this a new dynamic? And this is what's maybe hinted at throughout the entire story. Is this a new dynamic between these two, or is this just history repeating itself, that Ellie just latches onto a kid as a servant and uses the same techniques, maybe slightly different with circumstances? Is Oskar doomed to the same fate as Hacken and possibly previous servants, familiars, because essentially it's the familiar vampire relationship? Or is this something new? Did a corner get turned? What do you think? Do you want to go first, Dale?
Yep. Wow, I really, really did enjoy the ending. Yep, I am. Yeah, I'll take these off. I really enjoyed the ending. It just leaves it up to our imagination, basically, what's going to happen. I get the feeling that because Ellie is a vampire, her human or her humanity, I feel her humanity is gone. Of course. I think she's latched on to Oskar because he is a vulnerable person. I don't think she's got, like I said, any humanity left in her. So whether or not she is falling for him slightly or whether it's just a predator-prey relationship, I think Oskar seems like he's quite strong around her. So I think it might work out. In my head, I've got visions of them going forward, and perhaps she might turn him into a vampire, and they could be together forever, or it's just history repeating itself. So it would have been interesting to see a second part. It's just my
What do you think about that, Andy? Is it just the pattern repeating itself, and this is how Ellie chooses her familiars, or is this something new, a new relationship, a new dynamic? And this, what do you think, Andy?
Right.
I think it's definitely something new for them because I think they both, as characters, and as people, were very lonely. Even though she's a vampire and a vampire is a monster, there was still a person in there, and she did have humanity because the way she treated him from the very beginning on, if he were just a tool to her, there would have been a buffer zone. There would have been some kind of boundary that she would have kept and wouldn't have gotten so close or wouldn't even have cared to have gotten close to him. And so obviously they gave each other something that they were both looking for. And I think they found like best friend soulmates in each other is what I think. And that gave them a new lease on life, which they were also looking for. And Oskar just found it in something supernatural that wasn't supposed to exist in the world. So discovering that a thing like her does exist in the world gives him a completely new way of living life and looking at life and living in the world and what the world is.
Fantastic. Yeah, to me, jury's out on, because there's enough there to suggest there's something new. I think, and I'm not saying it should have happened, but if there had been flashbacks with Ellie and Hakan, and we saw their dynamic, it might have solidified what I thought was going to happen. The fact that it didn't and leaves it open for interpretation, I really enjoyed, because I don't like everything spelled out for me. But if there had been flashbacks, the only hint we got was like I said, the photographs, the photo booth images. That's the only indication that she met Hakan at the same age, with no evidence to suggest one way or another. And that's what fascinates me, because I can imagine.
Yeah.
Like I said, because of the peeping Tom thing at the start, shows that he's a bit of an off character himself. He's not pure. And that lends me to believe that possibly that's what she looks for. But I saw something different. The vulnerability, like stepping in the house, showing the vulnerability, maybe was something she's never done with somebody before. I also think that Hakan got tired and was ready to give up. Why didn't take Oskar on? Why Oskar didn't go away with the both of them and Hakan train him makes me suggest that there's something different there, and he recognized it, and he understood that her love for him is gone, which made him give up. I saw that in the movie, which makes me lend myself to that this is a completely new dynamic.
Yeah. Yeah.
The only way I would know is if I saw when Hakan came into the play, was there an older familiar and did he pass it on? But we never saw that, so we don't know. we also don't know if she's a new vampire in terms of she was actually a child.
Mm.
That, as in that was the age she became a vampire. And Matt Hackett, we don't know, so that leaves it open to imagination. Truthfully, I suppose truthfully, I don't know. I know it's a cop out. I'd like to think that there's something new, a different dynamic, but I just don't know because it could be just history, and he could be like the 5th or 6th familiar in a long line of this, and it's always been the way that the old one dies. Why traditionally vampires have the familiar and then they have their way.
That's
they normally
kind
build
of
up a
the
little
impression I
nest.
got.
There's a nest of vampires, but this isn't.
That's the impression I got.
I suppose that's the fun of it. It's open to interpretation, and we'll never really truly know. And that's why I enjoy this movie, because it's so refreshing. Like I said, just to have it that I actually get to think for once, as opposed to everything just laid out for me in nice, neat little bundles.
It is refreshing.
Any final thoughts, Sandy?
I will always love this movie as a vampire movie and story. Not among any others, but it's very unique and it's a standalone because of my favorite scene in it. Because it answered a very simple question that any other story and movie could have tackled but didn't. But this one did, about what happens if they come in without being invited, and what would that lead to. And that's why I love this movie so much, because it did that, and it did it so well, and it was amazing. And symbolism, I love symbolism so much. It captures me almost more than anything else. And symbolism and allegory and illustration are my 3 favorite storytelling and literary devices. And this movie just had it so well and did it so well. So I love this movie so much. Always will.
Fantastic. Well, Dale, Andy, thank you very much for coming on. This has been a really fun chat. Yes, we had a few technical difficulties, but we got around them, so we're able to enjoy each other's company and talk about a fascinating story. Dale, where can everybody find you? Start for you. Saying, if you let everybody know where everybody can find you online, who wants to follow you?
You can find me on Facebook. My group is Horror Central.
Perfect. And Andy, where can everybody find you? Who wants to keep up with your own work?
I have my book Once Upon a Grave and Empath Sensitive Human on Amazon, and I have a presence on Facebook and on Instagram for being a Gothic horror author, and for my writings and updates on them, and for my recent work in Phantasmagoria magazine, which I'm so happy about. And thank you, Colin, so much for having me on the show and about this topic.
Always a pleasure. It's great to have guests on and let people see their purpose as well. The show's not just to obviously create content, have fun, but let people see the people behind the authors. It's so easy to get caught up with, oh, here's a book, not a book. I think the more people see you and what your thoughts and views are and different topics and the horror genre itself, it just gives people more of an insight. And for those who want to are more interested in your work, obviously check you out afterwards. Please do. 2 great storytellers here, great people to talk with.
Thank you.
Even with technical difficulties, we still managed to have a great chat, which was absolutely fantastic. Thanks to everybody in the chat. Your contribution and seeing the dynamics she's talking with each other is fantastic too. It just brings more life to these live streams rather than just a generic bland movie review. It gives the thing all a bit of life. As always, keep up to date with the channel. Plenty going on. Tomorrow I am guesting on Evil Live's channel to play Army of Darkness role-playing game, our second part of the campaign. So I'll post the links to that later. Plenty more interviews coming up, as well as our normal content. So until next time, folks, keep it creepy, keep it horrific.
Thank you.